Schwartz said this about love. The most important thing is to learn how to give out love and how to let love in. Today, as we get ready to celebrate Valentine's Day, love is in the air. We think about love everywhere. As we come to this day, we express that love in a number of ways. Some of us buy boxes of candies, and others of us buy flowers. Some of us send cards, and others of us take our loved ones out to dinner to mark this day of love, being reminded to love one another and to love God. But what do children have to say about love? How do they explain this word, love? A group of professionals gathered up children between the ages of 4 and 8 years old, and they asked them this question: what does love mean? Some of their answers are pretty profound, so listen and consider what you think about their answers. Billy, a 4-year-old, said, when someone loves you, the way they say your name is different. You just know your name is safe in their mouths. 6-year-old Christy said this: love is when you go out to eat and somebody gives you most of their French fries without making them give you theirs. And then Terry, a 4-year-old, said this: love is what makes you smile when you're tired. And Bobby, a 7-year-old, said, love is what is in the room at Christmas if you stop opening presents and listen. And then Nikki said, a 6-year-old, if you want to love better, you should start with a friend who hates you. And Tommy said, a 6-year-old, love is like a little old woman and a little old man who are still friends even after they know each other so well. And finally, Jessica, an 8-year-old, said this: you really shouldn't say I love you unless you mean it. But if you mean it, you should say it a lot. People forget. Love, the experience of love, the thought of love, fills this air today, this room today. Oftentimes in the church, we take the opportunities to talk about God's love for us. We don't have to think about it because it's always there in front of us. God's love for us. But so many times we miss the opportunity to talk about we humans loving God. Love is a mutual relationship. And it's the theme of our passage this morning that comes out of the book of Deuteronomy. It's a theme that gives a covenant around love. As the children of Israel, after 40 long years of wandering around in the desert, they finally come to the edge of entering into the promised land. And as they come into that land, God sets before them some choices. No longer were they ruled by the Pharaoh of Egypt, who would tell them when to work, how long to work, how hard to work, who would tell them what they would eat and what they would wear, who would even tell them what they would think. But most of all, Pharaoh would give them life or death. And at his will, he could snatch their life away in any moment. And now they have reached the edge of being able to process for themselves, to think for themselves, to make decisions for themselves. And sometimes that's tricky. Think of the time when you left home and had to make decisions for yourself. Mom and Dad weren't right there to help you make the choice. It gets a little tricky sometimes to make the choices and make the right choices that will bring life. Gandhi once said, "Where there is love, there is life." And I believe that Gandhi touches a little bit upon our passage this morning. As God sets before these children of Israel as they prepare to go into the land and possess the land, two choices. And the choices are between life and goodness, and death and adversity. And what keeps the thing alive is God says, love me with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and all your resources, so that life will go well, life will be prosperous, life will be happy, life will be content, life will be joyous. By loving me, all of these things come your direction. It's hard to make the right choices sometimes. Sometimes we don't always make the right choices. Think of the times when you may have made a wrong choice. A choice where you knew it was wrong later on down the road. But I want to give you some examples of wrong choices. A wrong choice could be one like this, or a bad choice. Sam Phillips sold a small recording company to RCA in 1955 for $30,000. It included in that contract an exclusive contract with a young man called Elvis Presley. Unknowing to Phillips, as he sold this company, he could have made millions and millions of dollars on the royalty if he had just held on to his dream and his belief. But he sold it. Here's another example of a decision gone awry. Tom Selleck turned down the leading role of Indiana Jones. And finally, in the early years of the life of Bill Gates, that's right, the computer Bill Gates, he had a girlfriend. And the girlfriend gave him an ultimatum. And the ultimatum was this: either me or the computers. We know what he chose. The computers. But I'm just a little bit curious as what she may be thinking about now as she sees how much money he has accumulated by sticking with computers. There are times in our lives we make wrong decisions, but those wrong decisions can also be turned around. For you see, in this passage, as God is talking through Moses and saying to the children of Israel, I set before you life, or I set before you death. They are looking from a hindsight kind of 20/20 vision. Because as they 70 long years. And as they contemplate what went wrong, they come to the reality of what God had told them as they stood at the Mount of Horeb and gave this kind of command to them: choose life or choose death. Choose goodness or choose adversity. We sometimes move into prosperity, looking at our lives and wondering how we live. And sometimes we find ourselves asking the same question as the Israelites: what went wrong? But as they journeyed these 40 years, as they recall the 40 years, it was a rough 40 years. It was a tough 40 years. It was 40 years of wandering round and round and round, wondering if they would ever get into the promised land of God. Maybe they were even saying, God is not going to let us get in. Or maybe they were even questioning, was there a promised land to get into? But this journey that they were on reminds me of a journey of faith. Franklin Jones put that wandering in a different context of love. And he says this: love doesn't make the world go around. Love is what makes the ride worthwhile. As they stood on the edge, ready to go in, their faith and their belief, even in the struggles of doubt and the struggles of not knowing whether they'd get there, their love, their faithfulness for God made the ride worthwhile. Our love for God, even in the tough times, even in the adverse times, even in the difficult times, even in the shadow times, makes the ride worthwhile.